Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I wanted to start a discussion on the soon-to-be-released prologue for Jurassic World Dominion, and how I think the movie could look if it went for a complete, scientifically accurate representation of the Cretaceous period in the preview that we'll get to see ahead of Fast 9. While we won't know the complete story of how that opening scene will go down until the 25th, here's what I personally think it could look like if they went for that more science-focused route. So I'm pretty sure by now that many of you will have no doubt caught on to the fact that Ankylosaurus is also going to be showing up in Dominion's prologue, which puts animals like the Quetzalcoatlus, Ankylosaur, and T-Rex being in the same location for Dominion's intro. Now this is actually a pretty good representation of the late Cretaceous that I think will go over well with most people, but the inclusion of the following dinosaurs is another story. Moros Intrepidus, Iguanodon, Nasutoceratops, Dreadnoughtus, Oviraptor, and the Giga. Personally, I don't think anyone would be too bothered by the inclusion of Pteranodon, which is already believed to be in the scene, but hey, if you disagree, please let me know in the comments down below what they could supplement it with. Now, one way in which I think the filmmakers could alter this Cretaceous opening and make it truthfully 100% scientifically sound would be to swap out some of these animals and just replace them with creatures that we know factually existed in roughly the same place and time as the Rex, Anky, and Quetzal. How I would personally do it would be through the following. Replace the Iguanodon with Edmontosaurus, replace the Dreadnoughtus with Alamosaurus, and then replace Nasutoceratops with a trike. But then when you get to the other creatures, here's where I kind of have a hard time deciding what direction they could possibly go in. Because if you replace Oviraptor, which is said to be fully feathered, and Colin Trevorrow has talked about how he thinks that will be a big deal for scientifically accurate looking depictions of these animals in this franchise, if you take that animal out and replace it with something like Velociraptor, you still have to call it Mongoliensis, which is kind of weird, and it would be a little bit of a pointless decision in my opinion. And then of course, if you take out the Moros Intrepidus, you're depriving that dinosaur of having its big screen debut in a Jurassic movie, which is by far the most fame a dinosaur could ever hope to accomplish, and it's also looking to be a really well done execution in the way that animal would look. So if you took it out and just made it something like an infant T-Rex, I'm not so sure that's actually as interesting or groundbreaking for dinosaurs in the long run. And it would definitely set the Moros Intrepidus back as far as how the public would get to see it, like ever. And then you get to the Giga, which then when you start to talk about taking that out of the movie, I think you move into actually harming the narrative, and I don't really think that would be a good idea at all, personally. See, the reason the whole Giga fight is supposed to be a big deal in Dominion is that it's setting up something of an origin story for the InGen T-Rex, while also more than likely giving us a dinosaur combatant sort of arc for the film. So if you replace it with just another T-Rex or something, I feel like that could do way more harm to the actual quality of the movie itself than if you just leave it in. Now, when it comes to the other dinosaurs, the reason I think something like Alamosaurus would be really cool for Jurassic World Dominion to have in its opening is because this was actually a dinosaur that we saw the Tyrannosaur attacking in the original Jurassic Park's visitor center. These are the bones that John Hammond had mounted in the middle of the building that the raptor, jumps on, and then the T-Rex destroys the other skeleton. Having an Alamosaurus and T-Rex in the same little area back in the Cretaceous period would be a good idea. And if you have them in the opening prologue together, I think you'd get a cool Easter egg for fans of the franchise and dinosaur fans in general. Plus, them coexisting, it's nowhere near as unbelievable to paleontologists as a Dreadnoughtus would be. But then again, just like Moros Intrepidus, if you take the Dreadnoughtus out, you deprive it of being depicted in a form of media, which is a bit of a bummer, seeing as Fallen Kingdom kind of teased it at the end of that film. Although I guess you could just show a cloned one in the modern day since it was in embryo form. It doesn't have to be one from the Cretaceous period at all. Triceratops being a stand-in for Nasutoceratops makes obvious sense because we know they lived alongside Tyrannosaurs, and then of course something like Edmontosaurus falls into that same category as well. All in all, if these changes were made, alongside replacing the Giga with just another Rex, the Moros with a little Rex, and maybe the Oviraptor with something else, I guess you could technically say that it's more paleontologically accurate, but then you've got the whole incorporation of feathers on the Tyrannosaur, which I think no matter what was always going to be something of contention between people. Personally, I will admit that I'm rather apathetic about whether or not they alter this scene in the long run, because unless they take the Giga out of the prologue, which unravels the entire story arc of the 1993 T-Rex getting its revenge on the Giga and giving the Jurassic series a through line, a lot of these changes wouldn't really impact the quality of the movie's story. So if anything, it would be all cosmetics and little to do with actual plot or narrative. I will say though that if they kept the Giga in and made some sort of line of dialogue for Grant to say or something where they were confused as to why they found Giganotosaurus bones in the region because it doesn't make any paleontological sense, and that way it actually got added to the narrative as some sort of mysterious anomaly in the Cretaceous scene. Maybe it crossed over through migration or whatever. It would actually be something that served the story, and also told everyone in the audience that the Giga v Rex battle millions of years ago wasn't something that was normal. So this way you're adding to the narrative and actually doing something that makes scientific sense, or at least more scientific sense. I think one of the reasons a lot of people accuse Jurassic Park 3 of being hated on is solely for the fact that the T-Rex died at the beginning by getting unceremoniously obliterated by the Spino. And while that's partially true, I think the bigger issue was that the Rex's death didn't really serve any purpose to the narrative, and neither did the Spinosaurus for that matter. So the reason they did that in JP3 was just to show that they've got this bigger, meaner dinosaur that kills T-Rexes with ease, but they never went into where it came from or what was the deal with it needing to be the star of the third Jurassic movie. So it looks like to a lot of people they just did it to sell more toys in the long run. Whereas I think if you had the Rex come back at the end of that movie and fight the Spinosaurus a second time, or even just explained why the Spinosaurus was important to the plot of JP3, you know, that whole it wasn't on InGen's list, so, you know, who knows what else they were up to. That's not like, that's just a throwaway line. It's not important to the story. If they added something with the Spinosaurus being important to its narrative, you would have softened that blow a lot of fans felt when the T-Rex died and never showed up like in the whole film after that in the early 2000s. The Giganotosaurus fight, or fights, as I'm sure there will likely be more than one, are a different story since they're making it an integral part of the InGen Rex's history. So narratively speaking, I think they kind of have to keep it in, even if they did alter everything else for the sake of scientific accuracy. But anyways, these are all just my own thoughts on the subject matter. They more than likely won't change this prologue, seeing as it would probably be massively expensive to do, and like I said earlier, I'm not really sold on the fact that it would really help the movie, like the quality of the movie, if they did that at all. Plus, it would have to be a big deal to go back into a film that's more than likely nearing completion and altering it for these reasons. Like I said earlier, I'm kind of apathetic to it, so if they do or don't, it wouldn't really bother me much. Honestly, yeah, I don't really think that I have much to say about it, but I know other people feel drastically different, and with that being said, I'd like to hear what all of you think about my thoughts on the subject matter. What do you think about the changes that I've suggested they could theoretically do to the prologue Cretaceous scene for Dominion? Do you like what I had to say, or do you think that maybe all this stuff is kind of unnecessary and it doesn't really affect the quality of the story, so why change it at all? Whatever your thoughts happen to be, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. Now before I go, I'd like to thank all of my game wardens, as well as all of my InGen executives. I'd also like to thank all of my parkers and InGen hunters as well. Guys, it seriously means the world to me that you all continue to support what I do, and I never want you to ever forget that. Now, I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video and hope you all enjoyed the content. If you feel like I deserve it, I'd appreciate the like and hope that you'll consider subscribing if you're interested in seeing me again. See you all in the next video, guys, and as always, take it easy.